Hey all, give me 5 minutes, okay? Hey all, so we will be covering integration today and the two sessions are left. So today and tomorrow will be the last sessions of us. So tomorrow I will be focusing on the doubt clearing session. So I will advise you to go through everything till I taught today, and tomorrow bring all the doubts and I will clear one by one. Okay. All right. So we will start with integration today. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. So first of all, you need to know what type of integrations that Salesforce supports. So these are the most used type of integration supported by Salesforce. So we use REST API, we use web service, we use SOAP API, and the final one is Streamline API. All right. So I will tell you what I will explain each one of them. Okay. All right. So first, let's say first a new one. Okay. So why do we use the web service first? So first, you need to learn why it is used. So let's say we have Salesforce in our end. So this is the source one we are using. And let's say we have WhatsApp or Instagram, let's say. So what we want to do is we want to integrate Salesforce with Instagram. Okay. So what our criteria is, so let's say we have some fields. Let's say in Salesforce end, we have account. Okay. So let's say in account, we have profile ID. Okay. Okay. So what we want is we want Instagram to populate this profile ID in Salesforce. Got it? So here what Instagram will do, Instagram will update or patch the profile ID in Salesforce. Okay. So first scenario is first criteria is if we want a third party to update, insert or patch our records, patch records in Salesforce, it's advised. Okay, it's better to use web service. Okay, so our scenario is we want Instagram to populate all the profile ID, profile details, profile photos and all in Salesforce database via integration. Okay, so the scenario is clear to everyone, right? Okay. Okay, so what are the layers of the integration in this example? So first of all, it is not advisable to directly integrate with Instagram from Salesforce. So instead, we have a layer called intermediate layer called MuleSoft. Okay, so what MuleSoft will do? MuleSoft will act as a, what can I say, as a, uh, as a communicator between Salesforce and Instagram. So MuleSoft will pass all the field details which need to be updated to Instagram. So Instagram will receive all those details and they will update the records and send back to MuleSoft. Again, MuleSoft will send the accurate data and updated data to Salesforce. So the integration will be done via MuleSoft. Okay. Or else, if we have the resources available, then we can integrate Instagram directly with Salesforce. But in most of the projects, Salesforce do not want to integrate with third party directly. Instead, they use MuleSoft. MuleSoft is also their application. So all the integration, I mean, integration related stuff will be handled by MuleSoft. So there will be a lot of jobs in MuleSoft. So MuleSoft will handle all this. So if I remember, I explained this, I mean, these layers, right, in MuleSoft layer in the first class during explaining the payment gateway, right? So there I told, right? So if we want to integrate with payment gateway with Salesforce, we need to use the MuleSoft. So MuleSoft will run all the payment jobs. Salesforce will give the details to MuleSoft that which fields need to be updated. They will pass the details to the Oracle, I mean the payment gateway, and they will take the values. MuleSoft will take the updated values and bring it back to Salesforce. So this is how the integration works. Got it? So Lavanya, any doubt?
No, Soham.
Okay. Okay, so now check how we can implement the web service and what are the important syntaxes. Okay, so first you can see here, there is a tag called @rest resource, and URL mapping is, let's say this is the case. So, okay. So let's say here what we are doing is we are enabling our field that can be updated by third party. So third party will update us, I mean update the value for us, right? So whenever the third party or MuleSoft will try to update the values inside Salesforce, they have to use some URL mapping to go to a particular record or to go to a particular data or field to update the values. Okay. So that is why we are using the URL mapping here. So this URL mapping will be used either by MuleSoft or by the third party API itself directly. Okay. So everyone understood why we are using the URL mapping? Any doubt on this, Lavanya? Is it clear?
Yeah, so
Soumya, is it clear?
yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. And then this is the first criteria you need to know, that for web service, we need to use the URL mapping, which will be used in MuleSoft or in third party send. Okay. And one more thing here, for here you need to note here is the class should be global. The class should be global. Okay. So whatever class we are using for REST resource, I mean for web service, the class must be global. So can you guess, can anyone guess why it should be global and it should not be public or private? So Soumya, can you guess why it is global? See, it is global because first of all, you need to know why it is global. So global identifier means that class can be accessible from anywhere. Anywhere means from outside the Salesforce as well, right? So here we are integrating this class with the third party, right? So they also have to access this class. So if we make it public, so which means it can be accessible only in the Salesforce, not from the outside. So that is why we make it global, so that the outside the third party can also access this class. Got it? So that is why that every class that should be used for integration must be global. Okay. All right. Okay. So what kind of methods that web service supports? Web service supports get, put, patch, delete. So these are all the important functionalities that web service supports. Okay. So can anyone guess what does put means? Yeah. For first, tell me what is put. So Lavanya, can you guess what is put and what is get?
No, so
Okay. So put means if we are trying to update or insert or patch any values, we have to use the put. So put means, let's say the record needs to be updated or inserted. So we use the put functionality, which means this will allow the third party to insert or update our records in the Salesforce. Okay. So that is the functionality of put. So what does get means? Get means they can only retrieve the records from Salesforce side. They cannot make any edit, or they will not be able to insert anything in the Salesforce. They will only be able to get the records. Okay. So let me write it. Only retrieve records. So put updates modifies a record. Patch modifies a field value only. And deletement you can understand. We can let other party delete the records from Salesforce, or the vice versa is also possible. Okay, so this is clear. So what is get, what is put, and what is patch to everyone? Is this clear? So Lavanya, is it clear?
Yeah, Soham.
Soumya, is it clear?
Yes.
So Bhavani, this is clear to you, right?
Yes, Sohan.
Okay. And I believe Sri, this can be understood by you as well. Okay. All right. So if we, so here our scenario is we need to we need to update the records for the profile IDs and all the profile details from the account. And we want Instagram or we want MuleSoft to update those records for us. Okay. So that is why we are using here the put method, right? So put method will allow them to write the data in our database. Got it? So if there is a requirement like they can only take the profile ID from Salesforce. So for that case, we will use the HTTP GET. So as we want to allow them to update the records in our database, we are identifying the method as HTTP put, which means Instagram will be able to update the records in the Salesforce. Okay. All right. So now we are here. We are creating a method here. Let's say that it is a method one, and we are having some logic here, and there is a exception. So I believe everyone knows what is exception handling, right? So Soumya, you know, right? What is
Yes.
exception handling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. Right. So the one more important point to note here is we have to do the exception handling for every integration. I mean, if there is something error in the integration, we need to know that. Okay, because see, this is updated by the third party, right? So if something wrong happens and we do not know the error, what is the error? So we also won't be able to handle it, and third party also won't be able to handle it. So the integration, for every integration, there should be a thing called integration error. And for any error, that integration error should be populated so that we can pass that error details to the third party as well to let them try again and do the useful steps. Okay. All right. So here I have written one more example. Let's say here we are using with the case. Okay. So in case, let's say there is a resolution code and we want other third party to modify the resolution code in our database. Okay. So that is why we have used the web service. We are used the URL mapping as this, and we need to share the URL mapping with the third party. So they will use the URL mapping and identify which class is there to support this. They will use the class and they will update it. They will update the record. Okay. Okay. So if it is if let's say, and what is the difference between put and patch? So put means if we want to modify all the record details, that is what we want to update in the entire record. So that is what the put is. And for patch, let's say we have a case record and we only want to update the resolution code field value. So that is called, we just need to patch the field. And so patch is the field level update, and you can consider the put as record level update. It will update the whole record but for patch, it will only update some field value. Okay, so here our requirement is, in the case we want the third party to update the resolution code only, not any other field value. So that is why we are using the patch on the resolution code. So here the method should be having this identifier, HTTP patch. So until this, clear to everyone?
Soham, what is this REST resource?
Okay, so this REST resource will support the URL mapping. Okay, so no URL mapping will exist without REST resource identifier. Got it? Because see, to to configure a URL mapping, right? So someone needs to hold that value, right? So REST resource is that resource where we can store all the URL mapping details. Understood?
Yeah, okay, Soham.
Yeah. All right. So till now, HTTP patch, I have completed the web service. So anyone have any doubt over here till now? Okay. All right. Okay. So here we have talked about how to update the records in Salesforce end by the third party. So now let's talk about how to update third party's record from Salesforce. So that is another aspect of integration. So here till now we have talked about how to update all the records or how to patch the records in the Salesforce end by third party. So now we will learn how to integrate and modify records in the third party API from Salesforce itself. Okay. All right. So let's say the scenario is this. It's advisable to use REST API. You can also use SOAP API, but I will talk about the disadvantages of SOAP API later. Okay. So how to implement this REST API? So this is the code for this. This is the code for this, how to implement this. So you can take a look over here. So first we need to create a HTTP request. And then following that, if the HTTP request is successful, we will have a response from the third party. All right. So what we actually will be doing here. So here you can see this is a URL, right? So this is their URL mapping. So like we were providing our URL mapping to them in the previous example. Now they will be providing their URL to us. They will be providing their endpoint URL to us, and we will set it in our request body. Okay. So first here we need to create a request, and that should be a HTTP request. In the request body, we need to set the endpoint with their URL mapping. So once we do it, we need to set the method. It can be get or set, and we will send the request. And whenever the request will be successful or unsuccessful, all those details will be stored in the response. So let's say Facebook wants to update some data in Instagram. Let's say, what can I say? Let's say the phone number. Okay. So we want Salesforce to update the phone number in the Instagram database. So what Salesforce will do? Salesforce people, Salesforce developers, as a developer, Salesforce, we will take the URL from their developer. So they will send us the URL. So we will set the endpoint URL with that URL, and we will construct the request. Now, after mentioning the method name, it can be set or get. So here I have written get, but in our example, if we want to set something, update something in their database, we need to mention set here. Okay. So if we mention set, this will be like this. So either we choose get or we can choose set, or we can use batch as well. Okay. All right. So this is actually the put. So put is a set. All right. So once we construct the request, we will send it to the third party. So whether the request is valid or not, first third party will determine that, yeah, this request is valid. They will process the request and they will share the response to us. So depending on the response code, we will be able to know whether our our update was successful or not. Okay. So here you can see there is a thing called response.get status code. So we use a standard status code format, and if it is 200, which means we are sure that the operation has been successful, the update has been successful at their end. Okay. So if it is a success, the response code will be, the status code will be 200. So that is the standard approach that everyone follows. Okay. So once it is successful, they will set the status code to 200, and we will track the response parameter. We will get the status code. If it is 200, then we will do our things. Okay. All right. So in this example, what we are doing is we are trying to get the details from the Instagram. Let's say profile ID, profile names. So we are trying to get all the details from Instagram, and we want to save it in our database. We are not allowing Instagram to edit our records. Instead, we are getting the records, we are getting the details from Instagram, and we are updating it in our database ourselves. Okay. All right. So till this, is it clear to you, everyone? Okay. I believe it is clear to everyone. Okay. So let's talk about the step. The scenario is get the details from the Instagram and store it in Salesforce. So what should be our first step? So we need to first collect endpoint URL from Instagram. Okay. So for example, so let's say this is the step. Okay.
I have a question.
Anyone is talking? Anyone?
Yes, sir. I have a
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
So, here the receiving API is the Salesforce, right?
Sorry, I
Because
didn't get you. Can you repeat?
the receiving end, the whatever
Mhm.
the data we are getting it from the Instagram to the Salesforce
Right.
in the
Correct.
situation.
Right.
So, at this point of time, like we have to give the endpoint URL of Salesforce or Instagram.
No. That should be the Instagram. Okay. Because we are
Like,
taking the data from Instagram, right? Got it,
but
right?
receiving ends URL will be passed, right? As you mentioned it earlier.
No. See, here Instagram, we will not let Instagram to do some operation, right? We will be doing
Um,
operation from our end.
Okay,
So
we are
it's
just
different.
taking the data.
Right. We are just taking the data from them and we are
Mhm.
updating our data based on that data in our system. Got it? This is clear, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. So for example, let's say this can be Instagram. It's a dummy. I'm just using for the sake of example. It's a account details or profile, whatever it is. That should be account. Anyway. So this is the, let's say this is the endpoint URL of the Instagram. And we want to get the data from this URL mapping. Okay. So now we have to construct the HTTP request. So here our two important step is set the endpoint URL and the method name. And for our example, the method name should be get. Okay. So my question is to you. So Lavanya, can you try? So if there is a scenario, let's say we are taking the data from Instagram, right? So let's say we want to update some data in Instagram end. Instead of taking the data, we want to modify some data in Instagram end from Salesforce. So what should be the method name here?
Put.
Correct. So if we want to update some data in third party's end, we have to make it put. All right. Okay.
If it is put, the URL will be changed or will it be same?
It will depend on purely depend on third party. If third party lets us to use the same URL, then we can use the same. Otherwise, we will change it. So it's not our point of concern. So we just need to collect the URL from the third party. They will provide us. Okay. All right. Now the third step is send the request. Get the response and verify if the response is successful. Successful means whatever operation we are trying to do, that is successful. All right. So Soumya, can you guess what should we use here to verify if the response is successful?
Status code, response to status code.
Correct. Perfect. So the status code must be 200. If it is 200, that means it is successful. Okay. So once we know the response is successful, we will retrieve the response body. Okay. And here we are trying to get the account records from Instagram, right? So in the response body, all the account records will be stored in a JSON format. Okay. All the account records from Instagram will be stored here as JSON format. So what is a JSON format? Does anyone know? Soumya, any idea about JSON format? Okay. Okay, so JSON format is basically a data structure which supports the key value pair. Okay. So let's say we have in account, let's say we have account ID, or let's say phone number, right? And let's say in a record, the phone number is 1234. So in JSON, it will be stored as phone number so this is the key, which is the field name, and value is the key field value. So this is a JSON format, and this is supported by all of us. I mean, all of the websites and servers. Okay. All right. So in the response body, all the account record details will be stored in JSON format. So now to get all the records, we need to retrieve, I mean, we need to decode the JSON format, right? So here we need to deserialize the JSON to a subject. A subject means it's a Salesforce subject. So in our case, a subject is the account. So we have to deserialize the JSON value into account to get all the records. So this is our entire step. So is it clear to everyone? So Lavanya, is it clear?
Yeah, Soham.
Okay. All right. So how to deserial? Yeah, go ahead.
Are we using any in between, like we are using when we are third party with the MuleSoft we are using, right? Like that, if you are integrating with
Okay.
Salesforce, are we using anything?
Yeah, for this example that I have just showed you. So in this case, we are not using any middle layer application like MuleSoft. We are directly integrating with Instagram. So if we want to use MuleSoft, then the endpoint URL will be changed. So we will ask MuleSoft to provide their endpoint URL, and we will use that here. Got it?
Yeah, Soham.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now how to deserialize a JSON? So this is the method, JSON.deserialize. So you can just explore it in the net. So how to deserialize a particular JSON body into a subject, so that you can explore on the Google. So just Google it, you will be able to find it. But this is a very important thing, how to deserialize a JSON body into a subject. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So here I also provided all the examples, so you will be able to see all this. Okay. All right. Now talking about SOAP API. So the REST API is clear to everyone, right? So how will you do it? So Soumya, you understood everything, right?
Yes.
So Bhavani, you understood everything about SOAP API, sorry, REST API?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So now SOAP API. Okay. So first disadvantage of SOAP API is they do not support JSON. And they only support XML. This is a disadvantage because nowadays everyone uses JSON, but SOAP API doesn't support the JSON. And JSON is the most useful thing because whenever we try to get the responses and all, they will come in the form of JSON, which is lightweight, which means we just take it and we just need to deserialize it. That's it, nothing else. But in SOAP API, all the responses will be coming as the form of XML. So all those responses will be coming in the XML form. And we will not be able to just decode it. I mean, just decode it to a subject. So that is not possible from the Salesforce. So for that, we use another application. So there are many applications to support all of this conversion from XML to other classes like Apex classes and all other language. So we have some application for that. For example, you can talk about Postmaster. So Postmaster is an application which supports SOAP API for format. So every integration using SOAP API will support it by Postmaster. So Postmaster will send the request like we send in the REST API. So Postmaster will send the request and they will receive the response as a XML format. And now they can convert it into Salesforce as object and all in the Salesforce data into Salesforce data. Okay, so this is a big disadvantage. So that is why nowadays people do not use SOAP API because it is time consuming and it requires a huge resource for that as well. We need to install other third-party application like Postmaster and all to support all this. Okay. And one advantage is there with SOAP API. It is more secure than REST API. Okay, because see, whenever we are trying to send the HTTP request to the third party, in between that communication, some intruder can corrupt the signal, right? They can intrude into the request and they can take the data. Or whenever we are trying to get the response, so whenever third party will send the response to Salesforce, in the meantime, someone can interrupt and get the response data from the response body. So attacks can be possible in the REST API. But in worst case, it is possible, but it is rare. It is very rare to attack in REST API configuration because no one will be able to know the endpoint URL other than us. It's a very secure URL and no one should be aware about that. But if in worst case someone does, if someone knows about the endpoint URL, then they can hack. I mean, they can get all the secure data. But in SOAP API, there will be no chance of that because we will not be using JSON and response request format. What we'll be using, we will be every time whenever the request and response will be transferred or it will be yet to configure. So every time we do that, we have to authenticate ourselves using the ID password and all. So that is why it is more secure. So each session of the SOAP API will need the authentication. But in the REST API, as you see, there is no authentication required. We just need the set endpoint URL. But in SOAP API, we need the authentication with user ID password and all. So that is why it is more secure than REST API. Okay, so this is one disadvantage and this is one advantage. Okay, so now understand how the SOAP API can be implemented. Okay, so if someone search in the setup as WSDL, then you will find two options. One is import and one is export. Okay, so let's say we have this is a web service class. We have a web service class, let's say. And one more thing, the SOAP API will need web service classes. Without web service class, SOAP API will not work. Okay, so let's say we have a web service class whose name is account update. Okay, and here we are integrating one Salesforce org with another Salesforce org. So for in this example, we are integrating one Salesforce org with another Salesforce org. Okay, so here we have in the source Salesforce org, we have this account update class. Okay, so what source will do now? So in the setup, you can find there is a thing called WSDL file generation. So the source will first generate. Step number one is source will generate a WSTL file. This file will be in XML format, .xml format from the web service class. So whenever we convert this web service class into WSTL file, that file will be converted from Apex to XML. Okay. So now we will share, the source will share the WSTL XML file to the destination org. Okay. So now this is all done by source. Now the destination org will take the data, take the WSTL file and import it in their org to create corresponding web service in Apex. Okay. So whenever we will have the WSTL file sent to destination. So in setup, you can find if you search WSTL file, you can find there is an option of importing a WSTL file. So whenever they import a WSTL file, automatically an Apex version of that class will be generated and the web service will be retrieved by the destination org. Okay. So after they have the sources WSL file, then the two-way communication, two-way integration will start. Two-way integration means, so both of the organization have the same file. The account update web service, because we have converted into WSTL file. We have shared the WSTL file to the destination org, and destination will take the WSTL file and again convert it into Apex class. So both of them have the same web service method, right? So that is why this will be a two-way integration. So any org can update other org's data and vice versa. Okay, so how SOAP API works, is it clear to everyone?
I have a question. Like here, instead of
Yeah,
Salesforce, both Salesforce orgs, can we do it with the third party as well?
yeah, we can do with the third party as well. But for the third party, again, we need to share the WSTL file to the third party. They will convert it into their language. Let's say a third party application only supports Java and let's say CSS or Java, only Java they support. They do not support Apex. Okay. So now after getting the WSTL file, they will convert the WSTL file into Java.
Okay.
Yeah. This way the two-way integration happens. So this is clear to everyone. So any question? Lavani, any question?
No, Soham.
Okay. So Vavani, you also understood, right?
In what scenario we use this SOAP API?
Uh,
Usually,
okay. In real cases, nowadays we do not use SOAP API, but if it is a very secure, communication, then we should have to use a SOAP API. Let's say if ISRO is communicating with NASA, right? For example, so that's a very, the what can I say? The worst part of communication is that if ISRO tries to communicate with NASA, so that's the most secure communication. So in that we can use the SOAP API. So like that, if the communication is very much secured, then we have to use the SOAP API.
okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this is all about the basics of integration. And then we have another thing called Streamline API. Okay. So what is Streamline API? So Streamline is basically, see, here there will be a channel. Okay. So first there will be a bus, or you can say it as a channel. So what is a bus or channel does? So let's say if you think about like this. So this is a channel. So this is a source, and this is destination. Okay. Okay. And both of them will subscribe the channel. Subscribes. And destination also subscribes the channel. So if there is any changes made in the source, that change will be pushed in the channel. Okay. So as both of the channel is subscribing to the, I mean, both of the source and destination is subscribing to the channel. So whenever a notification, so if in source, if there is an update or there is a change, so that change will be pushed into this channel as a notification. So it will reach to the destination. So destination will take the notification and understand, yeah, some update has been done in the source side. So now we have to update it in our side. So this is basically used to synchronize both of the organization. So this is what the Streamline API is. So if something happens in the source side, they will send a push notification to the channel. Destination will receive it and do the same thing in their database to make the synchronization. Got it? Okay. So what are the important things over here to know about is there is a thing called push topic, push notification, and streamline channel. So these are the most important parts of the Streamline API. There should be a push topic, there will be a push notification, and Streamline channel. So Streamline channel will have all the details about the channel. Push notification will have all the details about the notification itself. So what is the update and all? It will have all the details. And push topics means the notification is related to which object and all. So all those related object details will be stored in the push topic. So all of these, I mean, data will be shared in the channel and destination will take it and make the changes in their end. So any question for Streamline API? Any question, Lavanya, you can ask?
When do we use this Streamline API? So
Yeah, we use Streamline API, but it's very limited because in most of the cases, we use the REST API only and web service. So this is also important because what I can say, have anyone used RSA token like that? Okay. If you don't use, then okay. So have anyone tried to log in Gmail? Let's say your Gmail is logged in with phone, right? And now you want to log in the same Gmail from another phone. So now Google will send you a code, right? So you know that, right? So
yeah,
if you want, yeah, so that is a push notification. That is correct. So that's a push notification. So in Salesforce also, we support this. Okay.
okay.
Yeah. I think we have covered the integration. So if anyone wants to keep the integration in your resume, so first you need to be strong in the REST API. So most of the questions will be asked from REST API only. In integration, there is nothing much. So you just need to know the flow, how the integration will work. That's it. It's just sending the request and getting the response and data. So that's it, nothing beyond that. Okay. And also you need to know one thing. So how can we test the REST API? I mean, let's say we have a REST resource service, or we have a web service method like that, or we have a REST API method. So how can we test it? Because every time we cannot test during the development with third party, right? So how can we test it? Okay. So let's say we have created this, where is that? Okay, we have created this web service method and we want to test it. So we know the URL mapping. So this URL mapping should be used by the third party, right? So now what we can do is how to test it. So everyone knows about Workbench, right? So if you log in into Workbench, there's a thing called REST Explorer. If you go to that, there's a thing called URL mapping. So you just need to put the value of that URL mapping and you need to run the REST resource. So from there, you can test whether the Salesforce is running fine or not. I mean, the method is running in the Salesforce fine or not. So we will use the Workbench as our third party during testing. Got it? Any question on the testing part, Lavanya and Soumya?
No, sir.
Okay. So Bhavani, this is understood, right? How we test.
Yes.
Okay. So that is also an important question that could be asked in interview. So they will ask you how we should test the REST API methods and all. So you just can tell them that using REST API Explorer from Workbench, we will use the Workbench as a third party and we will use the same URL mapping and we will try to see if that is happening or not. Okay. Okay, so this is the thing, and all the other questions, like I told, what is the advantage of REST API over SOAP API? They will ask you that also. So you just tell them that, yeah, we can use the JSON format, which is very lightweight in REST API. So it is very I mean easy to send the request and response and get the response body and all. And they will ask you what is the status code if the connection is successful, if the integration is successful. So these are the questions that will be asked. Okay. So any doubt till now? Okay. So if this is clear to you, we can wrap up the session for today. And I will request you to everyone to go through all the videos till today, because tomorrow is our last session. So tomorrow I will keep it as a revision, or it can be a doubt clearing session. Okay. So if you find any doubt till now, you can ask me and I will clear one by one tomorrow. All right. So tomorrow there won't be any major, I mean, knowledge sharing, but it would be on the doubt clearing. All right. Okay. So, Bhavani, so during this session, this is our 9th session. So, how are you comfortable after this? Bhavani, are you there?
Yeah. So
Yeah. So, how are you confident after these sessions?
um, yeah, actually I don't know, but yeah, I learned so many things. What we can do in real-time projects.
Okay. Okay, Bhavani, thank you for your response. And Lavanya?
Yeah, so I learned so much by seeing this real-time scenarios, and maybe I can explain. I can cover a little bit in the interviews. So
Yeah.
it's really helpful for me to attend the interviews. At least I can maybe handle little bit. Before I don't know how to handle also.
Right. So you're confident, right? I mean, these questions will be asked only. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you're
yeah.
confident. Yeah.
Yeah, before and all, I don't know. I'm like imagining like maybe this is like that, this is like that. But after this little bit, I can relate it.
Okay. Okay. Thanks,
Thank you.
Lavanya.
Thank you so much, Soham.
Thanks. So Soumya, is it fine for you also?
Yes, so I really appreciate for everything what you have shared for us. Like, I really can say one thing. I got very clear idea about this topic what you have shared. Mainly the yesterday's topic, the sandbox and the
Right.
integrations. Today's integration. So I'm very much comfortable and confident right now. So I think I can pretty much explain everything to the interviewer now.
Yeah,
So
sure. Sure, Soumya. Yeah.
thank you. Thanks for
Thanks.
so,
Okay. So Sri, so how you can rate this? Because in most of the time I was explaining the dev, all right? So have you got your point as well?
Yeah, so I got understand about this Apex classes and all.
Yeah. So how about your admin? So I also covered admin concepts as well. So is it fine for you? I mean, are you confident in that?
Yes, so yeah, it helps me also to clear the interviews.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So, okay. So let's connect in tomorrow's session to clear all the doubts if you have any.
So could
Yeah.
you please explain like how once we get any requirement, how it will go? You said like a deployment and integration, like in middle of that any requirements users request to change that requirements. How can we handle those scenarios?
Okay. So if there is a change request like that, so first you need to develop it in your dev org, right? In dev sandbox. So once you do that, you need to move it to QA. So there will be QA testers who will test it. And after the testing is successful, you need to move it to the UAT. So in UAT, there will be business users who will be testing it before production. So it's a full copy of production, which means every record will be present. So they will create records and test whether everything is fine or not. So once that is first, we need to move it to the production.
Okay,
Okay.
and
So
you said like now Workbench is the third party. Do we need to install it, Workbench? Because I couldn't find it.
no, Workbench doesn't need any installation. It is purely on the cloud like Salesforce. So
Okay.
you just need to log in with your credentials.
Mhm.
Okay. And Workbench is not that third party. I just used that example. I mean, to
Okay.
testing, you can use that Workbench as a third party because it's not the third party application. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I believe you also all of you have also installed data loader, right?
Yes, I installed.
Yeah. Okay. So try to explore that data loader. So try to extract some records or update some records. So if you have any doubt, we can clear it by tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. All right then. Yeah. So
thanks.
Thank you so much.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.